Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you happen to be. I'd like to welcome you to this overview of our Socket S550 contactless reader writer. I don't know if you can see this very well, but the pictures will work. I'm Len Ott, CTO here at Socket Mobile, and joining me today will be Eric Glanzer, our VP of Software Development. Krishan Wiley, who's one of our key software developers, is going to give an overview of a demo app that we did. And also on the line is Vince Coley, who's our product manager for the S550 and expert on all things tags. So he can answer any very specific questions you've got, and they'll all be monitoring the question and answer dialogue. You can access that through the button on the bottom of your screen. We do have a Q&A scheduled for the end of the session, but please feel free to ask any questions you may come up with as we go on, or we can address them at the end. Quick overview of the agenda here. So I'll give a quick overview of the 550, and then Eric will come along and talk about the Capture SDK, give a quick overview of that. And then Krishan will do a quick little walkthrough and whatnot of our Nice to See You demo application. And then we have a little bit of time at the end for Q&A. And this presentation will be recorded and made available through our developer portal. You can see the link up there. So a few basics on the S550. It's available in 2 colors. You can see that on the right there with the white or the black, and we can do some customization for the right order quantities and whatnot. So contact us if that's something you're interested in. The 550 connects to the host device using Bluetooth Low Energy. So it's got a very long range, 100 meter in good conditions, and more than enough throughput to handle the data needs of the 550 and the host device. I also wanted to mention that there are access points available. We've been working with some third parties. This would allow you to control a number of 550s through these access points. So from one system over Ethernet or Wi-Fi or even up in the cloud, you can control a number of 550s. And we can certainly help you get in contact with some people who can help you with that. The 550 has multiple operational modes, and I'll get into these in detail later on. The first one is a basic mode, also known as keyboard HID mode, and we'll talk about that. And then a smart reader mode, where it can do a lot of the data processing internally for you, and we'll talk about that one a little later. That's probably the most common mode. And then coupler mode, which basically just allows you to talk to the card or the tag through PCSC, and I'll talk about that later on as well. It does have a battery that should allow for operation up to 16 hours, although actual time will vary depending on your usage model. And there is a cable, of course, that you can have plugged in all the time, so you don't even have to worry about that if it's not an issue for you. There are a couple of security access modules inside the device, as well as a SIM slot. And this is to allow for dealing with high security cards. So we're not going to talk too much about that today, but we're certainly happy to have a conversation with you about that subsequently. And we can read just about every NFC RFID tag in the 1356 or HF frequency range. And mobile phone passes. That's a really key attribute of the S550's ability to read wallet passes from Android and Google phones, or excuse me, Android and iOS phones. And that's a thing we'll talk about later on in this presentation as well. We also support peer-to-peer mode and card emulation. Not going to talk about those too much today, but that is a possibility for implementation as well. And the 550 also supports customizable LEDs or lights and sounds. You can see that ring around the outside here can flash different colors and whatnot, and I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. Also, some of the things you can do with the sounds of the device as well. And the firmware is updatable over the Bluetooth Low Energy link, so a wireless firmware update is something supported as well. So the first mode is the smart reader mode. This is the default mode of the S550. That's how it ships out of the box. comes set up with 4 what we call templates by default. One for Apple VAS, one for Google Smart Tap, one for an NFC tag, and one for NFC forum NDEF messages. These can be customized and changed, but these are what comes in the device as shipped from Socket. Using this mode requires utilizing our Capture SDK, which we're going to talk about later on, or directly accessing it through BLE. Not probably the recommended way to do it. We have vendor-specific service UUID, this big long set of letters and numbers here, and some vendor-specific characteristics in a proprietary format. So we're happy to make all of these available to you, and they're all quite discoverable, but we highly recommend, if you're going to do this, using the Capture SDK, because we kind of hide all this and make you easy to access just the data you want without having to worry about these big long service and characteristic UUIDs. As the Capture SDK can handle all support. The next mode, operational mode, would be keyboard mode, also known as basic or HID mode. This utilizes the Bluetooth SIG GAT HID service, which is supported by all the major operating systems and most non-major operating systems, if you will. It's a standard defined by the Bluetooth SIG, so it just works with everything. So the data that is read off of your tag or phone or whatever appears to the host device as if it was typed on a keyboard. You need to make sure that the focus is on the field you want it to go to. This can be quite problematic if you've got multiple fields or on your form or web page. If the user taps on the wrong spot, the data goes in the wrong place, and it's really hard to contend with that. So if you're going to use this, it's recommended you only have a single field. But this is something you can get going pretty quickly. You don't have to write any code, and it'll just work. But it can be rather slow because there's a lot of data that has to be transferred and processed for every single character that is read from the NFC tag. And some of these NFC tags can hold an awful lot of data. So you need to use this, do a lot of testing before you actually would deploy using keyboard mode. But it certainly can get it up and get something up and running quickly, and nice for some quick demos and whatnot to sort of do a proof of concept. And there is some data control that can be done inside the 550, some pre-processing. And then the last mode is a very advanced mode, also known as PCSC Mode, which stands for Personal Computer Smart Card, if that's ever important to anybody. Originally, PCSC was developed by Microsoft and implemented in Windows NT 9X. It shows you how long it's been around. There's the link for their working group. That web page is still active, but from what I could tell, nothing's changed since 2013. They're at version 2.0114. But this spec is still widely used, widely supported. There's lots of libraries for it. So people that are kind of in the know about it. So in this mode, we call it a coupler because all transactions with the 550 would go over PCSC protocol over BLE and go directly to the card. This gives you the most control over what you're reading and or writing to the card, but it is rather complicated. Primarily, you're going to use PCSC if you want to do writing, because normally with reading, you don't need this level of complexity. So I want to talk a bit about some non-NFC specific capabilities in the 550. These are more general things that we've added to the product just to make it more usable that aren't really specific to NFC RFID. There's a number of Bluetooth pairing modes we support. Out of the box, it's in a plain unbonded mode, which means it just connects to your host device and starts working. It's wonderful. But there's also bonded and encrypted modes you can enable if you want a little bit higher level of security and authentication and whatnot. We support the Bluetooth battery status service so that most of the operating systems will tell you the battery level without any other application running, which is kind of nice. But this is also available to your application through the Capture SDK. So very useful feature to be able to support, but it's a very standard thing. You can control the light ring. You can see in this picture over here, it's got orange all the way around it. So we've got a 4-quadrant light ring with 4 colors inside of it that can be mixed and matched and blinked and whatnot. Comes out of the box with a number of pre-programmed patterns that we'll be adding to as we go. And you can also program your own custom ones. So keep an eye out for that. And the 550 can play custom sounds. I'm not going to do that over the webinar, but out of the box, it'll announce connected, disconnected when it connects and disconnects from the host device, as well as inform you what operating mode it's in when it connects. So it'll say reader, coupler. So that's a nice little diagnostic tool that can be very helpful when you're first using the 550 and connecting it to your devices. And you can download custom sounds over the BLE or USB link. I didn't mention the USB link, but we do have a USB link that's accessible on the bottom, on kind of under the battery cover. It's designed more for developers and deployment scenarios, not designed for normal usage, because most everything you're going to want to do, you'll do over BLE, but there are a few occurrences where the USB, either for security or whatever, is a little bit easier to do. So one of the most exciting capabilities of the 550 is the ability to do wallet passes. These are kind of new for a lot of us. We hadn't been using them much. You know, with the new Apple iOS releases, they're starting to come out more and more. Apple's been adding a lot to their capabilities. Google's had a lot of capabilities for passes in the past, but with Apple being the 800-pound gorilla, everyone was kind of waiting for them to come out with their offering before things really took off. Well, they've done that, and things seem to be really taking off now. So on the screen there, you can see sort of a sample pass for maybe the Buffalo Bills football game. And we'll talk a bit about that. But we can read passes from both Apple and Google, and we've got certifications from both as well. Those certifications are applicable in our smart reader mode. If you do go PCSC, you'd have to go get your own certifications. But again, you probably don't really need to or want to do PCSC. The reader mode should be completely adequate for anything you might want to do. So there's a lot to passes in terms of backend, getting them set up, managing distribution, things of that nature. We won't profess to be experts at it just yet, but we are working with people who are experts at it. So, you know, everybody's figuring it out as they go along. There's a lot of features involved with these passes that you can take advantage of. You don't have to, but they can be very powerful, and you can kind of start off easy and then just start adding things as you go. Geolocation is one. The pass is only active if you're in a certain physical area based on the GPS settings. You can put embedded links. You can see that on the one on the right there that says join the screen experience. That's a link on this pass. The passes can be time bound to a point in the future and expire at a given date. You can include images on them. You can see they've got an image of the stadium there. And you can also include a barcode on there for cases when the pass needs to be read with NonNFC reader. And we'll talk a bit about that in the Next to See You app, because we support both NFC reading or reading over a barcode, since we do make a lot of barcode scanners. So this is just a little overview of kind of what's required to manage passes. So you can see that you have some kind of an application that has to request a service to build up a pass. And I list a couple of the pass service providers we've been working with here. There's others. You know, I'm not saying these are the only ones, but these are some we've worked with early on. So you'd set up an account with them, send them information and say, okay, I want to create a pass for Lenot. And they would then send to my phone, either over SMS, email, or something else, the pass. And I'd get a notification on the phone and say, oh, you've just received a pass from Ninja Fashionist Loyalty. Do you want to put it in your wallet? And I would probably say yes. And it would go into my wallet and be ready to be read by a 550 or other NFC reader. The reader would read the pass, send the appropriate information up to the host through the SDK and on into your application. In theory, you could create your own passes, but you'd have to go through certifications with Apple and Google and do a lot of back-end work. So probably you'd want to find some partner to work with for this pass creation portion of it. So I did mention the security access modules inside the device. These allow for secure hardware storage of security keys. There's one internal one built into the hardware and another one with that is a removable SIM card on the bottom for easy deployment. These keys are used for validating high security tags. Generally, you program these keys into the device over USB for the additional security, and feel free to contact us if you'd like to discuss this further. So that was kind of a very quick overview of the S550, some of the features and capabilities. We're very excited about this product that we're starting to ship it now. So, and Eric's going to give a quick overview of the Capture SDK, which is the preferred way to control and talk to the S550. Eric?
Yep. Thank you, Len. So I am Eric Lenzer, VP and Chief Software Architect at Socket. And I'm going to present you the overall, in fact, of the Capture SDK. I don't know if there we go. So first, I'm going to start by the core concept of the Capture SDK. And basically, the Capture SDK manages 3 objects. The first one is the capture object, which is the main object of capture. That's the one you are going to open with your app credential. I'm going to talk about the app credential in the later slide. Then we have the BLE, so the Bluetooth Low Energy Device Manager object. This one is the one that will drive your BLE experience through the SDK. You receive a reference of this object through the Device Manager arrival event. And from there, you can control the BLE behavior. And then we have the Capture Device object. So this one really allows you to have access to the 550. And you receive a reference of that object through a device arrival as well. Each time the device arrival occurs is when the 550 is connected to your host. And same thing for the device removal. Each time the 550 disconnects for any reason, you will receive an event, a device removal event. And using the object reference, you can access to a bunch of properties of the device through what we call a get and set property method. In order to use the Capture SDK into your application, it's an easy 3-step process. So the first one is to open Capture, so the main object with your app credentials. And so for that, you will need to register your app on the Socket Developer Portal in order to retrieve an app key. And then you use the app key to open Capture. There is no requirement of internet connection to verify to make this app key verification. Then in order to be able to discover the 550 using BLE, you have to set the device manager favorite to star. This means that you want to enable any 550 in your vicinity. It's just a one-time settings, so your app can do that only once. That's good enough. That settings will persist. And after that, the BLE device manager will automatically connect or even reconnect to the 550. So you don't have to do anything in particular in order to connect to the 550. That will be done automatically. And of course, there is an option if you want to always connect to a specific 550. Then you can set that favorite. Instead of saying a star, you will set to a specific ID that will identify the 550. The last step is when you get the data into your application. So this is done through the implementation of the undecoded data, the notification you receive into your app. So you will receive all the tag information into the data of that event. You can receive either the tag ID, the tag data, depending on how you configure the 550. So a little bit of code. So this is an example of opening capture with Swift. So we require 3 main information, which is the developer ID. That's the developer ID you get when you register on our Socket developer portal. You have the app ID, which is derived from your application bundle ID. So this one is case sensitive and has really to match with what your bundle ID is. We have a prefix of this bundle ID that is platform specific. And then you have to specify the app key that you retrieve when you register your app on our developer portal. And then you just have to open capture with this information. So the same way, in order to activate the BLE connection, same thing. So you receive, so this is the handler for the device manager arrival. So in there, you can check if the favorite is set or not. And if it's not set, then that's the opportunity to set the favorite with the star. So here is a good example, in fact, to see the device manager arrival reference will be given into this device argument. So you can do a set. So that's what I called earlier, set or get properties. So in that case, we just set the property, the favorite property of the device manager to a star. It's also a good opportunity for me to let you know that all our API are asynchronous. So you will always get a completion handler to our code. So this was explicitly designed so you can drive the API through the UI of your application without, without blocking the main thread of the UI. So the integration of the Capture SDK into your development environment is available through CocoaPod. So this is really easy to install and update your environment with this mechanism. You can be notified for new updates if you register into our GitHub page for the SDK. And of course, on our GitHub page, you can see some code sample or even the SDK because we do release some code in the SDK as well. Capture Helper is the recommended way to use our SDK because it will reduce the amount of code that you have to write in order to use the 550. And it provides already a set of the most common features that people usually use with the 550, such as reading the battery status, the finding them, and stuff like that. We do have a GitHub page to show some working code sample. So you can use that also for using that for your code if you want, just by doing a copy paste. If you want to have something really quick running. So the use of the SDK allows you to have a better user experience control. So, of course, you can show the connection status of the 550 into your application, monitoring those device arrival and device removal. You can indicate the battery level into your application using also the API. And you can provide a feedback to the user with our LEDs and sound. So like Glenn mentioned, we have a bunch of LEDs that can be controlled and as well on the sound. So you can use that to indicate different states to the user, such as confirming a good read of a path, and to mean if the path is successful, or in the other case, when the path is invalid, by example, depending on the type of application you have. And I am done with the SDK presentation.
Okay, so now I'm going to give a high-level overview of the Nice to See You app, which is built on top of the Capture SDK. And first, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so again, my name is Krishan Wiley. I'm going to give a bit of a high-level overview of the code behind Nice to See You. And before I do so, I'm just going to give a context of what the app is built for. So Nice to See You is meant to be on like a countertop, say like for a coffee shop, for example. The app will be running on an iPad, and the clerk would like to have like a count of all the people that have visited and how long they visited, how many times they visited, and so on. So the idea is the app will be running, it'll be connected to a 550, and a customer walks in with their mobile pass on their iPhone or their Android phone, and they'll scan, and their number of visitors will be incremented for each time. And of course, they can sign up for the day if they're, say, working a shift, it's an employee. So how this works is first, the clerk would like to connect to the 550. And the way that works is we're going to do an auto discovery. So for the code, as you can see on line 107, we have a function called start auto discovery. And what this does is it provides a number of seconds for the SDK to discover any nearby devices. So like I said, there'll be a 550 on a countertop, maybe one or two, maybe three. And based on the number of time that you provided, it would have a window of opportunity to connect for all of those devices. So first, what we do is the device manager that Eric mentioned in the previous section. And you guys see my screen. I'm currently on line 118. Okay, so again, to just recap what I was saying before. So first, the device manager has to reset the favorite to a blank string, which is here on line 118. And what this does, again, is allows the SDK to perform a discovery without auto connecting to the previous favorite. So as a empty string, it just gives it free reign to look around, so to speak. So next, what we do on line 124 is actually begin the auto discovery with the timeout that was provided. So for example, let's say we have 5 seconds. It'll discover any nearby devices for the next 5 seconds. And then the next thing that what happens is in our capture SDK, we have a function called did discover device. And what it does is it returns any string that's basically represents the devices that were found. And in the string, there'll be an identifier, the name of the device. So it might be called Sarah's favorite S550 or anything that you provide. And of course, the service UID. So based on these 3 parameters, we can look at which device is on the table or anywhere in the vicinity. So once this completes, we create an actual discover device object, and then we return this object to the previous function, which I'm going to go back for a second, and it's returned in this completion handler. So as Eric mentioned in the previous section, it's all asynchronous. So the UI isn't blocked by any of this happening. It's just when the device is discovered and the timeout completes, we'll have a list of devices which represent any of the devices that were discovered in that time period. And then finally, when the completion ends, we have a discovery ended handler, which simply returns all of the devices, the list of devices, to a separate screen, which you can, select which one you want to connect to. So again, to give an example of what I said before, is if you have 3 devices on a table, now you can physically see the 3 devices on your tablet, your iPad, or whatever app is, whatever device is running the Nice to See You app. And then you can click and choose to see which one you want to physically connect to. And that'll be the favorite going forward. And that, again, is why we set it to an empty string in the beginning, so we have the opportunity to connect to them. So now once the clerk would, select a device that they want to be the favorite going forward, the next thing that happens is the passes part. So again, my sharing is paused. I think I can't change screens, I believe. So Glenn, you might have to restart it once more. Yeah, sorry about that. So apparently I'm not able to change, the screen that I'm displaying at the moment. So again, next thing that happens is the decoded data part. So this is where we actually get the data from the pass that's being scanned. So whether that pass is an iPhone pass, an Android pass, and a barcode scan pass, which is if an NFC device is not available at the moment. And lastly, a NFC tag. So all of which can be represented as a pass, and the data that's stored on that pass, regardless of the format, is received in this decoded data function. So the next thing that we do is, in these 3 steps, we would verify the data on the pass. So we're expecting a particular format, which is the user ID and the username. So the user ID is just, a series of alphanumeric strings, characters, and the username is it could be their first name, their last name, an email address. Usually this is defined when the pass is created. So once we verify that the pass has the information that we're expecting, then there are two possible cases that the pass can be processed. So the first is the pass can be added to, say a digital wallet for that user. So a user can have an iPhone pass, they can have an Android pass, they can have an NFC tag pass, all within this digital wallet that's represented in the Nice to See You app. So this is separate from your Apple Pass. This is separate from your Android pass, Android wallet, I should say. So the way this works is first the clerk would say, okay, this person wants to add a pass to their existing wallet. And that happens here in line 65 through 79. So first, we just make sure that we can determine the pass type, which is here on line 66. And then going forward, we create a new virtual pass within the Nice to See You app. And then finally, we'll just add it to that existing user. So again, this works where the user already had an iPhone pass. They've already signed up. They've already been created within the Nice to See You app, but they want to create another pass to go along with it. So I guess the best example to give with this is they want to have a security where if they lose one pass, they can still sign in, they can still check in at this coffee shop or gym or whatever it may be. So the second possibility, or second case, I should say, is if the user already exists or they don't exist. So the first case is when they exist and they just want to sign in for the day, meaning they've been here 12 times before and they want to be here for the 13th time. They want to add the number of visits to their list of memberships. If you're in a coffee shop, maybe if you visited 15 times, you get a free coffee. So, to keep track of that, we need to make sure that we have a way to identify the person every time they visit. So first, what happens is on lines 83, we check if we can find a user with that pass ID. And again, the pass ID is stored within the actual movable pass. So again, if we can find that user, then we will just find a pass that matches that user. And then we have a bit of a way to have like a security check for passes. And the way this works is iPhone users and Android users their passes are considered secure because the phone is expected to belong to the person that walked in. However, if you have an NFC tag, they can be created kind of in different ways. So we just want to verify that that person is who they say they are. And in here, we check if the pass is secure. And if it's not, again, like that's the case if it's an NFC tag, then if it's not, then we would ask the clerk, or rather the clerk would ask the customer to provide some kind of verification, usually like a driver's license or, whatever case, whatever they might want to supply at the moment. So that's only for NFC tags. But for iPhone and Android phones, they're verified just by using their pass to scan with the 550. So that's what happens if the user already exists. That's what's happening here. But if the user does not exist already, they're just going to be created as a new user. So, if they scan with an iPhone for the first time, they're going to be created as a new user within the Nice to See You app with the iPhone pass as their first pass. And again, like I mentioned before, if they want to add other passes, the clerk will handle this on their own, and this code will be run here. So that is pretty much how it works. The two possible configurations are, again, if the user wants to add a new pass to their existing wallet, and of course, if they just want to sign in for the day, or if they want to create a new user. All of this happens behind the scenes. The clerk doesn't really have to manage too much. They just need to press whether or not this person, if it's this person wants to add to their existing, and of course, if they're not, they won't have to do anything else. It'll just happen all on the screen. And yeah, that's pretty much how the Nice to See You app works. And yeah, that's the end of this demo.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Krishan. This app is available up on the Apple App Store, and we'll be making the source code for it available on GitHub if it's not already in the very near future. So please feel free to send any questions. I don't see any questions on our question dialogue now, so I guess we'll wrap up. Again, this session is recorded and will be available up on our website fairly shortly. So thank you very much for attending, and feel free to contact us with any questions or possible scenarios for usage of the S550. So thank you very much.